Shut up and sit down.
All right, everybody, we got a great podcast here for you today. Today we're talking with Greg, Ernie, and Jared from Tethrd, talking a little bit of saddle hunting. And with this podcast, we took a little bit of a more functional approach. It's not your typical, this is your tether, this is your bridge, this is what a saddle is. This is more for the guy who is interested in saddle hunting, maybe on the fence, maybe has some reservations or questions. So we kind of try to take it in a little bit different direction and kind of talk about the main frequently asked questions these guys get, as well as a little bit of information about the company and kind of how, a little bit of how they got into saddle hunting and where the company came from. So real excited to bring you this one today. I hope you guys like it. And if you do, please leave us a review on whatever platform you're at. We're still at 41 reviews on iTunes. We've been there for like 6 months. So, I know that there's a lot of people downloading. I know that there's a lot of people listening. So if you could please leave us a review, give us a rating on whatever platform, that really helps us out. I mean, right now we're trying to get to 1,000 likes on Facebook. We're at like 997 as of right now. And we've got 41 reviews. So, if one or two of you could help us out with that, that would be great. And follow along with us on Instagram. That's probably where we're most active. Everything that goes on Instagram goes on Facebook as well. But we're going to be doing some more. We got some things coming on Facebook where we're going to start some streaming and kind of go back to the video that we started at the very, very beginning of this. That's going to take a little bit of time, but I'm working hard on that right now. Thank you to our Patreons. We had a new Patreon from Green Bay, Wisconsin, Bob. We really do appreciate it. You can find that link on the bowhunterchronicles.com website. It's bowhunterchroniclespodcast.com, but the links will be on Instagram and Facebook. If you guys want to check that out, if you like what we're doing, you want to help out the show, you want to help us push forward and do a little bit more of that video or something like that, please, don't hesitate to do that. We do really, really appreciate it. Thanks again, Bob. And this weekend, August 17th, I'll be up at the Michigan Backcountry Hunters and Anglers Rendezvous, and I'll have a bunch of koozies and things in my backpack. I'm going to be doing some podcasting up there. John's going to be out of town. I'm going to try and get Frank to come up there with me and kind of hang out and hopefully meet a bunch of the listeners. And I'm going to have a bunch of koozies, so if anybody sees me walking around or wants to come up and say hi, I'll have some koozies, and I'll hand those out to you as you come up and say you're a listener. We really do appreciate you, and if nobody listened, we'd still be doing all this stuff, but we just, I don't know, I don't think we would be quite as motivated. So as much as we hope that we're helping you out. We do appreciate each and every one of the listeners, and really excited for this episode, and I hope you guys really enjoy it. So thanks again for listening. If you see me this weekend, come see me, get a free koozie. Thanks. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Bowhunter Chronicles podcast. Adam and John here. And on the other end of this line is a podcast that's taken a long time. It's been hard fought to get. We wanted to talk a little bit of saddle hunting, and I've been going back and forth with Greg, G2 Outdoors, Tethrd for about 2 years now. I think since 2 Februaries ago, we've been talking podcasting, and it just hasn't come together. And so today we've got the opportunity to talk to Greg, Ernie, and Jared Shaffer from Tethrd. So how are you guys doing today?
Doing really well.
Yeah, fantastic. We're coming back from Iowa, actually. We spent the day with the hunting public down in Iowa and got to hang out with those guys and talk saddle hunting. So you're actually catching us in the car right now. So if you hear any weird sounds or anything, that's just Ernie crashing the car. So don't be too alarmed.
So to this point, I think, and I think you guys are a big part of that. I didn't want to have a podcast now and say, like, well, what is saddle hunting? And I think, you guys know, and anybody that's listening that wants to know about saddle hunting, that wants to buy a saddle, that wants to get into it at this point has realized, there's a few places that you can go, and there's the popularity has boomed so much that there's wait times and there's all sorts of this other stuff. And so what I wanted to do today was kind of talk to you guys about all of the maybe frequently asked questions or learning curves or the things that you guys have seen throughout your many, many years of saddle hunting, and kind of what the barriers to entry are, what the learning curves, all of that sort of stuff. But first, let's just get kind of a background on your guys' your history with saddle hunting and the company of Tethrd, because talking to Greg earlier, I told him, I said, I really like everything about your company, because you guys are 100% saddle hunting first. I mean, on the saddle hunting forums on Facebook and everything like that, you guys are on there daily making recommendations and looking at people that are doing stuff on their own, and maybe making recommendations of saying, hey, I tried that and this is what I found, or that doesn't really look safe. You're not saying just buy my stuff. So that's one of the things with all the experience that I really enjoy. And so, kind of panel wise, how do you guys get into saddle hunting and the history behind Tethrd?
Yeah, sure. I mean, saddle hunting at its heart, I think the core of it is a group of DIY guys who just like to tinker and make stuff, right? And we're no different. I mean, that's the stuff we really like to do. So basically the way Tethrd kind of came along is, at that point in history, there weren't a lot of options. There weren't a lot of commercially available products for the saddle hunter. And a group of us got together and said, hey, we're tired of having to shop Craigslist and shop all these weird places to make our own stuff. Let's see if we can't make something that for the masses that we can use, and we'll just basically split the cost up between the 6 or 8 of us, and we'll have something that we can use. And as that kind of grew and moved, it exploded, ended up being Tethrd. And it was 2 separate projects. I was working on a platform while Greg was working on a saddle, and one day over the phone we kind of just said, all right, let's make the all-in-one saddle hunting shop. We'll have both offerings, and who knows, maybe we'll sell 50 of these things and we'll be in good shape. And then now we are here today.
You want to talk, Jared? Talk about your saddle hunting experience?
Yeah, sure. So I started saddle hunting back in 2014, just out of necessity, basically, just trying to lighten my load, because I was carrying a heavy climbing stand and I was filming all my hunts. So, I dove down that rabbit hole, and I think at that point the forum, the saddlehunter.com forum, it just kind of got started, and it was me and Greg and Ernie and a couple other guys in there that we were just constantly sharing DIY ideas, and it just kept evolving from there. And when Greg decided to launch his saddle and start Tethrd, he called me up and said, hey, do you want to test a saddle for us? And how can I turn down something like that? So I jumped in with him, and it's been a crazy ride ever since.
Yeah, it's really, Jared has been there since the beginning of Tethrd. Shortly after Ernie and I, like he talked about, decided that we were going to try to make this thing work, Jared was one of the first phone calls that we made, because he's super crazy talented, and he's a killer. He's got a lot of experience in a saddle, and it just made sense for him to come and join the team. And Jared actually just started August 1st. As we record this, it's the 6th, and August 1st was his first day as a full-time Tethrd guy. So now he's officially on the team, as from a pay perspective too. So not just donating his skills and talents anymore. So that's pretty cool that we've taken this idea, like Ernie talked about, and it has gone from a bunch of dudes online talking about saddle hunting, trying to make the perfect stuff, to now where we're able to make it a real thing. And the people that helped start the business, they're the ones that are going to join in and make it a lifestyle, which is pretty cool.
And so, not to put you on the spot, but with Tethrd, and starting a new company, and starting a company that is, I guess, everything that you guys make and do is 100% safety related, right? So how do you guys deal with that aspect of it when, there's a lot of, just thinking of the flack and everything that I get, reading from, on the forums and things like that, where there's one company or two companies that have been around for a long time, and, people are saying you're going to put your life on the line with these guys that have just, never done this before, never had any of that. I understand that you guys have been doing this for a long time, but what is the quality control and everything that goes into something like that, and the safety? How do you deal with that?
Well, there's several things. One, we're only using premium materials, like our Amsteel bridge, for example. That stuff is rated at almost 8,000 pounds, and with the way that we're using it, you would never ever see 8,000 pounds, right? It's just not reasonable. There were questions that people had about, well, you can't have the bridge folded over a carabiner. It's too tight of an angle. So we tested it. We took it to an independent test lab, and we put a carabiner through the bridge, and we put another carabiner through the bottom, and we pulled. And we're like, okay, let's see what happens. Well, at 5,000 pounds, the carabiner exploded. So then we had to beef up our testing equipment to get something bigger than the load rating that was on the carabiners. And eventually we broke that bridge at 11,000 pounds. Your body would not survive an 11,000 pound impact. You'd never be able to drop hard enough to damage that bridge. All of the seatbelts that are used in our 2-inch webbing are rated at 5,000 pounds or more. The 1-inch webbing is rated at 3,000 pounds. We've had this saddle. We've been down to a TMA test lab, and we've gone through some of the testing that you would normally go through for a TMA saddle. I mean, last thing we want is somebody to get hurt, right? So safety is a main priority. And I think another big thing about safety is instruction. If you don't know how to use your equipment properly, that's when people get hurt. There is a lot of DIY stuff out there, and there's a lot of things that, I think are probably a little risky. And we try and steer people away from that. But it's, at the end of the day, we're using quality materials. We're using quality sewing shops. It's just different, right? I mean, it's a different mindset, because just because it's lightweight, just because it's ultra mobile, doesn't mean it's not safe. It just means that we looked at it differently.
The other thing is that we've been totally transparent through this process. As far as I can tell, there's no one that's ever published the videos of them testing equipment to international standards. It's not like we just come up with a rating and say, yeah, let's make this saddle or this platform or this whatever, let's make it pull to 500 pounds. All right, that'll be awesome. That's not how it works. There's internationally recognized testing standards and facilities, third-party facilities like Ernie talked about, that you pay for. You pay to purchase these specs and to go to these facilities and execute testings done by an independent third party. That's the kind of stuff that we're doing to make sure that this stuff is strong and safe and well made. And frankly, there's really nothing else we could do. I mean, we've tested everything to failure. It's as safe as could possibly be, and we're happy with that.
Well, yeah, and mainly that's one of the reasons that I ask, because it's a double-edged sword, because everything is online. Everybody's a safety inspector online, but they're the same guys that hunt out of a $30 Walmart stand, and they leave it up for 2 years and still go back, but they got to bash somebody. So, I mean, I just thought I wanted to, going into the whole, like I say, overview of questions about saddle hunting, right? So, like I said, you guys are a big part of, I think, why it's more in the mainstream or more in the view of this mobile hunting type setup, where 5 years ago or whatever it maybe was a real small niche thing. I mean, you guys probably know, but like I can only picture the guy in the back of the Outdoor Life in the little for sale section or whatever, where there was a guy in a tree and it was like a black silhouette and a guy leaning over with some webbing. And that's the only thing until, maybe 3 or 4 years ago when I saw some of Garrett Prahl's videos that saddle hunting even like came into the fray. And so now it's everywhere, but everybody's an expert on it. And so for you guys who are experts, we're as close as you can get to something like that nowadays with saddles. What are some of the main questions that you get? I mean, some of the questions that we got asked when I put something out there is like, what about different body types? So bigger guys and, everybody wants to know, is it comfortable? And then like physical fitness levels, like getting up and down the tree and things like that. So what have you guys seen in the people that you've put into saddles, the guys that you've introduced to saddle hunting, and maybe things that you've seen along the way yourselves?
Yeah, I mean, comfort is probably the number one thing. I mean, guys look at it and they, guys that come from tree stands and they automatically say, well, there's no way that could be comfortable. So, we've just been really trying to educate people on how to use a saddle basically and how to set it up for your body type. And, that's probably the main thing that we see is just misinformation that's out there and trying to, just get that info out there, just showing that you really can be comfortable. And it just takes a little bit of, adjustment, a little bit of practice. Safety is definitely probably, it may be bigger than comfort. Greg, you want to talk about the safety aspect that people question?
Yeah, people often ask, there's a handful of questions. Is it comfortable? What do I do with my feet? How do I shoot out of it? It can't be safe. I'm going to fall and I'm going to die. And we've all heard those questions 1,000 times. And Ernie, as he's been going through the trade show circuit over the last couple of months, he's probably fielded that question in person more than anyone else in this conversation. But I've been asked hundreds of times online, on my YouTube channel and on saddlehunter.com and on social media, those same questions. And Jared hit the nail on the head. You really can work through all of the objections or the cons or the negatives or the insecurities that you might have about saddle hunting if you're willing to keep an open mind and try new things and give it a fair shake. In 15 or 20 minutes in your backyard, 6 inches above the ground, you can work through pretty much all your questions. You can figure out how to shoot. You can figure out how to move the saddle around on your body and to adjust your tether length to make it comfortable. You can flip upside down and test the safety. You can do all of those things in really just a few minutes in your backyard if you're willing to give it a try and if you're willing to keep an open mind to learn something new. It's really not that complicated. I tell people all the time that there's definitely a learning curve, and there's a learning curve both physically and mentally. You have to get your body kind of used to it, what I like to call saddle shape, which doesn't really mean how fast can you run a mile or how many push-ups you can do or how much can you bench press. But when you hang in a saddle as opposed to sit on a metal tree stand, the geometry and the physics, it's just different. So it takes a little bit for some people's bodies to get used to it, and I call that getting into saddle shape. And there's also the mental aspect of it, of learning a new thing, of trusting your gear, of keeping an open mind. Those can all be negatives if you're not willing to try and to keep an open mind.
So on that saddle shape thing, one of the things that I've encountered, I guess, and I would say that I am not in saddle shape, But in the experience that I've had practicing, in doing this, one of the things that I've found, and this I think is probably another one of the questions that you guys get more often than not, is what about bridge height? When I've talked to Aaron Blicey, he lives over by John Eberhart and was introduced to saddle hunting long ago, and so he was hunting out of trophy line saddles for 10, 15 years or whatever, and he said that he was always taught as high as you can reach, and now it seems like it's lower. It's going to ultimately depend on comfort, but for me, one of the things that I've noticed, and maybe I'm doing everything ultimately wrong, is like where I'm comfortable, I have a real hard time like standing up straight because I'm like leaned back, and then I have to like almost like lean forward to the tree and then stand up and let the weight off of the tether to stand up. And that's something that really was difficult for me. And then one of the other things that I wanted to ask, like with, it probably falls right into that same conversation, is like the curvature of trees, leaning trees this way or that way. I mean, obviously you're going to get as level as you can, but the tree maybe not be level. So one of the things that I've found, and like I said, my setup probably wasn't set up perfect, and it's going to be one of those learning curves, but like, man, some of the times when I was set up, like if I lean too far, it's like I'm going to fall and swing around. And maybe that's into the trusting your gear thing, but it's definitely right there. So, I mean, that sort of stuff, how do you, for someone who gets one the first time and there's a million guys online that say, well, I got a saddle and it's not comfortable and it's, so scary and all this stuff. And I think that's the not open mind person. But like how those things are things that I've encountered in the short time that I've been in a saddle that I'm working through. So do you have any tips for those types of things?
Yeah, I think that's one of the negatives about saddle hunting is that you can't go to Cabela's or Bass Pro Shops or insert sporting goods store name here. You can't go there and talk with a knowledgeable person that can walk you through the setup procedures, that can walk you through the pitfalls that are common to people that are learning the system. If you wanted to buy a tree stand, you could go to any one of those sporting goods stores, and that guy or girl who's helping you, they could explain, what they're hearing from customers about the comfort of this particular tree stand. Or you can find, this one or that one, and there's lots of resources available for how to get comfortable in something like that. Whereas you don't have that opportunity with a saddle hunting setup. You've got to buy one or get a buddy that's got one, and hopefully one of you have figured it out, or it's really intuitive, or you just get it right away. But it's definitely one of the cons that that learning curve exists, and that it's not easily you can't overcome it that easily for some folks. Now, some of the tips that I would say, reference to your specific situation, is most likely it's a setup. It's a setup problem. You may have your tether too high. You may not have enough slack in your tether. You may be wearing the saddle too high or too low on your body. I would guess that's the most common thing that we see and that we're able to help people with, is generally people have the tether too high, and we tell them to move it down, and that fixes a lot of it. Or they have the saddle too high up on their waist, where the top belt of the saddle is up equal to or higher than where they would wear a belt, and that's generally too high. Most people find it more comfortable if you slide it down more underneath your butt. But those are real common things, and if you were with me at a tree or with a knowledgeable person, we could fix that in like 2 minutes and you would have it solved. But for most folks, they don't have that resource, and that's something that's difficult to overcome.
And so with that, how do you, as a saddle hunting community, what's going on to kind of, you guys are direct to consumer. Everything seems to be, direct to consumer. And so how does one go about that? I mean, I know, or I believe on the saddlehunter.com forum, there's a a map that shows where people are, and kind of a networking thing. But how do you overcome that? Because that is the problem. Or is there any way that you can replicate that at home before you go there? And even going to a show, you're going to be able to get in it and sit in it for a few minutes, and then you're going to either have a terrible experience depending on who showed you, or you're going to buy one if they're available.
Yeah, so one of the things that we've been doing a lot of is we've been sponsoring saddle demo days, and we've been doing them all over the country where somebody will organize an event at a park, at a piece of public property, etc., and invite people to come try on saddles, do a little bit of community networking, and get some education there so that basically people can come and try everything on and work through some of their hiccups in a group setting with people who have already kind of ironed out all the bugs. That's one of the most effective ways that we've seen at this point. You can also, go to any of the YouTube channels or any of the other social media things where there's all kinds of instructions, but your learning curve is a lot steeper by yourself. You can get somewhere where somebody can look at you and be like, yeah, I see your problem. Here's how you fix it. That's going to be the best way. And honestly, the thing is, the more saddle hunters we get out there in the world, the more of those resources are going to be available. More likely than not, you're going to have a friend who's figured it out. As this keeps growing and growing, you're going to know more and more people who have gotten over the hump, know how to get these things adjusted. And so I think that problem is kind of a short-lived problem. I really think that as this style of hunting expands, it won't be so hard to learn all the details.
Yeah, I can see that. I've seen a few of the ones pop up here in Michigan. One of the moderators there, Andrew Blair, is a Michigan guy, and he's put on at least one, but I think there was two here in Michigan. But is there any way, where would you go to find one of those if you weren't in your local saddle hunting group or something like that? Is that something they can find on the Tethrd page, or?
Probably the best place is either the Saddle Hunter forum, saddlehunter.com, or there is a Saddle Hunter Facebook page. Those are the two biggest places to find like-minded individuals and find these people that are putting on these demos. Saddle hunting's still kind of a niche, right? We're still kind of the nerds in the room that are doing this on the side. And so you got to kind of go to the math classroom where the nerds are to find them.
But you bring up a really valid point, is that is the main con to me, or main negative, when I think about the things that make it difficult for people to learn about saddle hunting or to get into it. I think the accessibility to gear and to experienced folks that can help them out is a big deal. Now imagine you got a climbing tree stand. You just bought one online. You had nobody there to show you the ropes and the pitfalls, and you just walked out and you were trying to figure it out for the first time. It would take a little while to figure it out. And it's no different with this. I would say 6 out of 10 folks that get into saddle hunting, it kind of clicks right away. My brother was one of those 6. I sent him a saddle. He was going to go to Kentucky on a rut hunt last year. And I said, all right, Bobby, now once you get this thing, you need to make sure you set it up in the backyard and you play with it and practice with it, figure out your tether height, figure out how everything works before you go off to Kentucky and hunt out of this thing. And, of course, he didn't do that. He got the saddle, threw it in his pack, and drove out to Kentucky and hunted with it for a week. And he called me, after the second day, and he's like, Greg, I don't know what you're talking about. This thing was awesome from the moment I put it on. I never had the first issue. It was just, I took to it like a duck to water. And I did not have that experience when I got into saddle hunting. So 6 people out of 10 get it right away. 3 out of 10, it takes a little bit of time. I was one of those 3 where I had to figure it out. I was uncomfortable in the beginning, but I understood the advantage of it, the advantages that were so superior to a tree stand. In my opinion, they were superior. So I stuck with it. I figured it out. I fought through the uncomfortability of it, and that was how it worked for me. Then you're gonna have one guy out of 10 that just either doesn't give it a fair shake, or you can't get the hang of it, or for whatever reason it just doesn't work. That's okay too. It's not for everybody. Just like some people can't imagine using a climbing tree stand because they feel totally unsafe, or they can't sit on a lock-on tree stand for more than a couple hours because their back hurts or their legs hurt or whatever it is. It's just everyone is so personal, and it's hard to say, this one system fits everybody. Wear your saddle in this specific place, tie your tether at this specific height, make sure it's exactly this length, and then it will magically work. It's just so personal. The trees change, the angles change, the seasons change with your clothes, and so there's just too much. There's just too many variables to be able to say this is a one-size-fits-all in every scenario.
With that whole thing and all of your guys' experience there, and maybe I'll direct this one to Jared. I know a little bit of the backstory on Greg and Ernie, but for Jared, what's one of the main things that you've learned saddle hunting, and what kind of pushed you to saddle hunting, and then through that, what made you kind of adopt that as the go-to and now lifestyle and employment?
Yeah, so like I said earlier, I started saddle hunting in 2014 just to try to reduce some weight. I was using a API climbing stand, and with all the camera gear that I was carrying, I was pushing over 40 pounds. And, I hunt the mountains of West Virginia, so just carrying all that weight was just getting to be too much. So I actually started with a Guido's Web, which is it's the heaviest saddle setup you could get. And I saw the benefits of it right away. I hunted with that for a season. The next year, I switched to an Arrow Hunter Evolution. I messed with it, and it was just a little bit too bulky for me. So I actually hunted the rest of that year just using the top belt of that saddle, just sitting in it like a sling. And I really found that I really liked the mobility and the weight of that. And just from there, I just kept, trying to go lighter and smaller. And I was really learning, the benefits of the saddle mobile hunting. I was learning that I could get into a lot more different trees. I could hunt, closer to where the deer are bedding at, just because it's quieter. So, as I got into lighter and, more mobile setups with the saddle, I saw my success go up. I started killing more mature deer, having multiple opportunities in a season. So I've always seen the benefit of it. And, I've certainly had days where it was uncomfortable just because of a tree issue, or I just wasn't doing it right. But I've always seen, the value in it, and work through any issues that I've had, just because I think it's, for me anyway, it's the best way to hunt for my style. And I've since sold all my tree stands, and I can't ever see myself going back, to a conventional stand. Even after doing it for so many years, I still have days where I'm uncomfortable just because of the way the tree leans, or I have to get in a weird spot in a tree. But when it comes down to it, I'm setting up to kill a deer. I'm not setting up to be comfortable. But if you do it long enough, you learn how to work through all that stuff and how to make it work.
And so when you first started out with that Guido's Web setup, was there any sort of switching back and forth, or did you jump right in? One of the things that I did and John did last year as well is, we committed to the 100% stand and sticks. I actually sold my climber because I knew that I would fall back on it. I would get lazy, and I would use it. And I've heard, like I said, the DIY sportsman Garrett Pearl talk about he was back and forth, and until he 100% committed for one season to the saddle. And I don't know if it's just that falling into that comfort thing or what you're used to, but were you able to just take it and run with it the whole season, or did you have what do you call them, relapses with the tree stand?
Yeah, that didn't happen for me. When I commit to something, I mean, I'm going to do it all the way. I'm going to figure it out, come hell or high water. So I jumped right in. I sold every single stand that I owned the same week that I got the saddle. I had researched it that much. I was familiar with everything. And this is back when information really wasn't available. I mean, I'm looking through old archery talk threads, just very limited resources when I started. And I had convinced myself that it was going to be the way to go. And I sold everything, sold my stands that week, and fully committed to it. And it was there was certainly a lot of learning that season. The very first time I hunted out of the web, I had a really nice buck come in directly behind me, and I couldn't draw my bow back. I was in kind of a funky position and couldn't draw my bow back, and he got away. But I just stuck with it and practiced more, and just fully committed to it. And I actually have not hunted from a traditional tree stand since then.
And with the saddle and the filming, have you seen added benefit to? I mean, that's one thing I've heard a lot of good things about filming from the saddle. It seems like if you were a cameraman, it would be the 100% end all be all as the best setup, because you could completely move around. But in my limited experience, like I said, having all of that stuff, it's new to me, having the bridge in front of me and then the camera arm and then the camera and then on what side, how high above the bridge, below the bridge, etc. So what tips would you have for guys that are going to be filming out of a saddle?
Yeah, I mean, I've never had any issues filming from the saddle. It's just a little bit different setup, and you need to work through your system to see how it's going to work for you and, how you prefer to set up your shooting lanes. So for me, I'm a right-handed shooter, so I set my camera arm, about 3 o'clock on the tree, just above knee height. That way, if I'm shooting to my left, which is my strong side, I pass the camera arm between the tree and myself underneath of my bridge, and I can film that whole left side. If I have a shot out in front of me, I can swing the camera around the tree and film all of that. And, there are a couple tricky angles, to the weak side while you're self-filming, but, the same goes for a tree stand as well. You're going to have a weak side there where you have to, potentially run the camera arm around you to film to that side. So I don't think that there's more problems filming from a saddle. It's honestly about equal. It's just a different setup process. My camera arm base is actually an important part of my system because I can hang my backpack off of it. I don't use knee pads. I use a small XOP seat pad, and that actually hangs off of the strap that goes around the tree for my camera arm. So the camera arm is kind of pulling double duty. It's a gear holder. It's my knee cushion holder. So, it actually works out better for me because I can use it for more than one thing.
And you talk about that pulling double duty. You guys have some new offerings coming out from Tethrd that haven't been available before, and it looks like only one of them is out right now. The one I'm looking for is just the regular gear hanger strap that Greg says you can make for $2 or whatever if you have a sewing machine, which I don't. So what are some of the others? You've got the new mini Versa straps out available right now online and things like that, but other types of that multiple purpose gear and things like that, what have you got coming out new from Tethrd this year?
Yeah, we've got 3 coming out this fall. You hit 2 of the 3. the Versa straps, which are awesome. Our chief designer, Carl Kasuth, he designed the Versa strap, and we took it to the next level like we do at Tethrd, and we made it ultralight and packable and super crazy strong. The Versa strap is basically what it's really intended for. Is it's basically a replacement for buckles and heavy straps for climbing sticks. So you can get rid of that buckle that weighs 4 or 5 ounces and replace it with a Versa strap, which is a daisy chain style strap. There's 3 different options for Versa straps. There's the mini, which is out right now. There's the standard, and there's the polyester version. So the mini and the standard, they're made from the same material. It's an ultra-high molecular weight polyethylene. It's the same material that we make our AM steel bridges from. Super crazy strong. The braking strength on the mini and the standard are around 1,500 pounds. It's incredibly strong, yet it only weighs an ounce. So you can save nearly a pound by getting rid of your heavy buckles and polyester straps and switching over to Versa straps. Now, the polyester version, it's still really lightweight. It only weighs slightly more than an ounce, but it doesn't have nearly the strength. It breaks at around 800 pounds. So not quite 50% reduction in strength, but a significant reduction in strength. Now, do you need more than 800 pounds to use on a climbing stick? Probably not, but it's still a matter of, if you can get something that is just as light yet way stronger, I'm going to pick the thing that's way stronger. But that's the Versa straps. It's a really cool product, really versatile. You can use it for a lot of different things, and that product is out now. We've also got what you mentioned, the HIS strap, the HYS strap. That's coming out here in just a couple of weeks on our website, and that is a public land legal gear hanger system, it's real similar to a molly system where you would strap this row of webbing around the tree, and then you're free to hang your gear in whatever way suits you. I like to hang my bow on the left-hand side of the tree, my pack on the right, and then I put my rangefinder, my grunt call, and stuff like that right in front of me, and that makes it really easy with the HYS strap. That's a product that I kind of came up with a couple of years ago and was just sewing them in my house on my little $100 Singer sewing machine. It's super simple. I mean, if you've got a ratchet strap in the garage or some webbing, all you have to do is fold it over, make a bunch of loops, and you're good. So you can make this thing for next to nothing. Or if you're not, like you said, if you don't have a sewing machine or you're not real handy with that kind of stuff, you send us $20 and we'll send you one. Whatever works for the hunter. That's what we're really about. I mean, we'd almost rather you make it because we love guys that do DIY. It keeps you engaged in hunting year-round. It makes you pay attention to your gear. It gets you more creative when you start making your own stuff because you start seeing different ways you could reuse and multi-purpose items. So we love it when guys DIY stuff. So please, copy our design, make it better, make it cooler, make it your own. That's totally fine with us. We encourage it. And then the last thing that we have coming out this fall is the Predator Pack, which is a small, ultralight, early season pack designed around our Predator platform. So it's basically a sleeve that the Predator platform was tailor-made for, and then it's full of molly tabs as well, which you can connect anything you want. You can make this thing heavy or you can keep it ultralight and sleek. It really just depends on how you want to use it. It comes with detachable backpack straps, so if you want to use it independently of anything, you can throw it over your shoulders and wear it just like a backpack. Or if you'd rather attach it to your saddle or some other pack, you just use the molly tabs and attach it to your saddle that way or some other pack, and you can get rid of those shoulder straps. It's a super versatile pack. It's very modular, and that's kind of what we believe in, is being modular and use it when it makes sense and don't use it when it doesn't. So those are the 3 things that we've got coming out this fall, but we've got a lot of stuff in the works. 2020 is going to be a very busy year for Tethrd.
I'm sorry, guys, but I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't say, you guys are coming out with all of this new stuff and you've made all of these changes and things are getting better. But for all the guys that say, where is my damn saddle? I ordered it on such and such a day. I know I ordered mine last year. My mom did. I'm 38 years old. My mom ordered me one for Christmas in October. She actually called and threatened Tethrd and
Yes, I remember
emailed
this.
back and forth. And we talked about this at ATA. So, I mean, maybe that helped. If you guys want my mom's number, I can give that out to you. She can call.
I
So,
actually think I remember your mom.
Yeah, I remember.
No, it's actually that's a really good question. One of the things that we've been super concerned about is that exact problem. You know, we've been kind of behind the eight ball since we opened our doors last year, and we take it serious. But it's like every time we increase production to keep up, more people buy it. So what we did is we made some really big moves this year. One of those was we hired a man named Chris Harding. His whole job was to get our lead time down to a week. We basically said, here's the deal. You're an expert in textiles. You're an expert in sewing factories and etc. You've got contacts everywhere. Go. Fix it. Make it so that we don't run out of stuff. And if you have been paying attention at all to any of our shipping updates, we've gone from 12 weeks behind to roughly 4 to 5 weeks behind in less than a month.
And let me interject there. That's not because our demand is still through the roof. I mean, we're selling more now than we ever have, but Chris has done such a good job of this stuff that, you know, that's what's really cutting down the wait times.
Yeah. And we're in a situation now where every day is better than the day before. We're reducing lead times weekly. Our goal still is to be down to 1 to 2 weeks by middle of September. I think we're going to get there. It's just one of those things where it was basically a year-long project that required lots of steps and lots of moves along the way. And I think we're finally starting to see some of those results and see that happening. You know, the last thing we wanted to do is make people wait for their stuff, and it sucks, we know, but we're getting there all dialed in. One of the main reasons on some of these new products why they are not available yet is quite simply we don't want to get in that game again. So when you see that those products are available on our Tethrd website, it's because I've got them in boxes on the shelf ready to go. We just don't want to get behind again. So that's been the biggest delay in the new products is we went ahead and put the resources together to get all that stuff made so that it's ready to go.
Well, that's awesome. And I mean, I think that's great information for guys, like I said, because like I said, I felt like I'd be remiss if I didn't say, you know, what the hell's going on over there, because, you know, people want their stuff when they order it. It's supposed to be in stock, blah, 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 blah. So, you know, I guess you hit your mark of 50 that you guys wanted to sell.
Yeah. Ernie needs to tell that story about how maybe did in the beginning, but about how we just wanted to sell a couple and get an elk hunt. Did you say that?
Well, yeah. I mean, that was the thing. Greg and I, we're not businessmen. We're DIY saddle guys, right? And we're like, all right, this will be awesome. We'll come up with something. Maybe we can sell 50 of them, 100 of them. You know, if we did that and we played our cards right, you guys, or we can both get our saddle for free, and maybe in a year we'll have enough money that we can go on an elk hunt. That was really our goal. And when that bill came due for the first saddle order, we were terrified to order 200 pieces. Terrified, because we're like, what are we going to do if this doesn't work? And like I said, we've been in the hole ever since.
Well, that's awesome. And, you know, just this conversation and seeing you guys at ATA, it couldn't have happened to a nicer group of guys. I mean, it really sucks that you're so far behind the eight ball, but, I mean, that's a good problem to have, I guess, is you know, you're selling and you're spreading the word about saddle hunting. And I think that can't be lost in this conversation, is that you guys are saddle hunters first, and what Ernie just said, like not businessmen. It doesn't really matter. I don't think you guys really care if they buy a tethered saddle, if they sew one up themselves, as long as it's safe. And, if people are getting out there and getting in the saddle, so to speak, I think that's where your guys' passion is, and more power to them. And, eventually they'll come around to your product because, you feel that you're making what needed to be produced. Right?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because it couldn't be more true. I mean, we're a company full of saddle hunting maniacs. This is what we live and breathe when we're not doing it for work. We're at home on Facebook trying to help saddle hunters, or we're on saddlehunter.com trying to help saddle hunters, or me and Jared are out making videos about how to be a better saddle hunter. It really has overtaken our lives, and now our wives are getting involved. Jared came up and he came up to go with us down to Iowa to talk with the hunting public to do some video work, and this was his first trip since he just started this job just a few days ago. And so I sent his wife a message on Facebook, and I said, "Hey, thanks for letting Jared come. We had a great time with him." And she says, "I'm so jealous. I want to come." She said, "Next time you guys have a saddle hunting trip, I want to go." And we're hanging out here with Ernie's wife, Val, and she's like one of the greatest human beings I've ever met in my life. And she loves it. It's turned into truly an extended family kind of thing amongst all of us. It's been a kind of a crazy ride, but you hit the nail on the head when you say that we are saddle hunters first. And if we happen to make some money along the way doing something that we would have done for free, well, that's cool too. And if we get to meet a lot of cool people and do a lot of cool hunts and get to go around and see a lot of cool things, well, that's awesome too. But at the end of the day, even if Tethrd didn't exist, we would still be making saddle hunting more accessible to the masses, because that's kind of what all of our missions have kind of morphed into over the last few years, is just that we want people to learn more about the system.
Well, and you guys going down there and hanging out literally and figuratively with the hunting public kind of leads me into kind of where I want to take this next. But first, Ernie and Greg had an opportunity. They went and they came to Michigan, hung out with John Eberhart, showed him the tethered saddles, but they actually got a chance to hunt in Michigan. So the great state, the great whitetail state, all of the big bucks and everything of Michigan. I wanted to know how your experience was and versus your expectations versus kind of what came next.
Well, I mean, anytime you get to spend some time with John Eberhart, you're smarter when you leave than when you get there. He is a wealth of knowledge of saddle hunting. He's a wealth of knowledge of deer hunting in general. And so it was really cool to be out on his property and pick his brain a little bit and ask some questions and ultimately sit in some of his stands that were prepped. I mean, I call them stands, but they're just a bunch of railroad spikes and trees that you climb up and hang your tether from. But to be able to hunt his properties and do that was just a huge, huge thing and a big learning curve for us. Now, that being said, John didn't put us in his A-plus stands. And, we knew it, and he joked about it later. He put us in the training wheel stands, basically the stands that no matter how bad we screwed up the area with our scent control or our noise or our entrance or our exits or any of that, it wasn't really going to negatively affect his deer hunting that season. But the fact that he even took us out was a huge blessing and whatever else. And we kind of surprised John. We went down there without really telling him what we were bringing and what we were doing, and set up all of our cameras in his basement. And we said, all right, we're going to kind of do this live and see what kind of reaction we can get out of John. And we handed him the Manus saddle. And the whole thing was, we're just going to film this and see what happens. Now, thankfully, the reaction was good. Otherwise, you guys would have never seen the footage. And so it ended up being great. And John has been on Team Tethrd ever since.
And the hunting in Michigan, the deer that you saw versus what your expectations were. I mean, obviously being saddle hunters and, coming to Michigan and seeing John Eberhart is like that's I don't even know how to like create an analogy for that, because, he's a great hunter, albeit forget the saddle, forget that it's Michigan. But then knowing, that experience is going to be great, but the hunting in Michigan, the deer population, all the things, what did you think about the hunting experience?
Well, first of all, Michigan is freaking beautiful. Like, I had never been to the state until 2018, and I was blown away with how pretty it is. And then we saw deer, like Ernie said. I mean, he put us in the JV stands. I mean, or the trees. We weren't in the varsity trees, but you got to start somewhere. And I saw deer. I could have shot small bucks. I had a spike and a forkhorn come by that I could have shot. I had does come by that I could have shot. And this was all just in one afternoon on a random cornfield in a random place in Michigan. So it was an awesome experience for me. I kind of thought about shooting that little buck when he came in, just to drag it out in front of John and act like I was so proud of it, just to see what he would do. He probably would have ripped my head off. But it was a great experience for me. I can't wait to go back and hunt Michigan again.
Yeah, and the stories that you hear, I mean, if you pay attention to anything John says, he says, the deer around him are highly pressured, and they don't survive. To find a 3-year-old deer in the area that he's in is kind of an anomaly. You're looking for the needle in the haystack. So I mean, our expectations of seeing monster deer just weren't there, but being able to see deer was fun. And so I think the value and like the best part about that hunt was seeing deer and hanging out with John and picking his brain and whatever else. The expectations weren't there to kill a big booner, but boy, we came out of there smarter than when we showed up.
And so that's a great transition, because, you guys were out down hanging out with hunting public, and it was just announced recently that the public land challenge, whether that's the hunting beast puts it on or the hunting public puts it on or whomever, is going to be in Michigan this year. And so there's going to be guys from Tethrd, guys from the hunting public, guys from the hunting beast, Dan and Fault. They're coming to Michigan to, kind of duke it out, I guess, and walk into ground they've never been on and kind of test their mettle there. So who are you guys sending back to Michigan, and how do you think that whole thing's going to play out? And I have to imagine that was part of your conversation today with the hunting public guys.
Yeah, we're sending our whole crew. We're going to stack the deck in our favor. I mean, you know what I mean? Why? We're not going to bring a knife to a gunfight, that's for sure. But, yeah, me and Ernie are going. Jared's going. A couple other guys from our team are going. Adrian Wilson and Ted Bright, a couple of guys that are just absolute killers. They're going to come up there with us. Now, the way that the challenge works, only one of us are going to be quote-unquote in the public land challenge, and that's going to be either me or Ernie. We'll represent Team Tethrd, and we'll probably flip-flop, to be honest. He'll probably hunt for a few days, and then I'll probably hunt for a few days, and we'll switch off being cameraman or something like that. But then the rest of our crew, they're going to be hunting in the same area, getting the same, they're basically going to be doing the same thing. They just won't be, official entrance into the public land challenge. John had shoulder surgery this year, so he is 99% not going to be able to hunt because he won't be able to draw his bow. But John's going to be there. He's gonna help us create some content while we're there with Dan in Fault and with the hunting public and all the other folks that are going to be there. It's going to be a crazy time. After talking with a lot of folks that I'm friends with now in Michigan, with Andy Blair and Tim Clark and Mark Kenyon and Andy May and John Eberhart, of course, we kind of feel like we have the lowdown on the area. Well, not the area, because we don't really know what area we're going to just yet. But we feel confident that if we can find a 2-year-old buck, a decent little 100-inch 8-pointer, that we will have done something really well. So that's kind of where I've set my goals for that, is that we can come out with something along those lines. And if not, it doesn't really matter because we're just there to have fun. And how often do you get to go and be in deer camp with Dan Infault, the hunting public, and John Eberhardt? I mean, that just doesn't happen ever. It's never happened. So it's pretty cool that we're going to get to be a part of that.
And so you guys are going to be posting that ahead of time so everybody can come hang out with you. It's going to be like one of these big,
of course,
come see us and we'll show you all the saddle hunting tips and tricks, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, we've had multiple conversations with Zach, and he said, we're going to come to Michigan. It's going to be at some point, and I'm really excited to see it. I mean, I don't know, John and I and my father-in-law for sure. My father-in-law's hunted every single piece of public ground in Michigan north of the rifle line, it seems like. And it's just so hard to come by those really, really good bucks. And to do that and have that great camp experience, because I think when you come across those really, really good bucks, everybody is so close to the vest and they don't want anything to do with telling anybody. They don't want anybody around. They don't want anything. So I think you guys are going to have a blast. And I really hope that Michigan is shown for what it is. And I think you're spot on in your expectations because, I mean, John, what do you think? 100-inch 8-point? I mean, I killed a 3.5-inch 8-point last year.
3.5-inch?
3.5-year-old, excuse me. And I killed a 35-inch 6-point too, but I killed a 3.5-year-old 8-point last year. He was 105, and I looked at my buddy's 5.5-year-old 9-point, and it was maybe 110 with a broke-off point. So I think you're spot on in like what you're looking for. But it sounds like from the people that you talked to, that sounds like Southeast Michigan because the 100-inch 2-year-old up in the northern area is
well, it's not going to be
a really good deer.
I'm gonna show my Michigan ignorance here, but it's not going to be up in the top part of the mitten. We're not going to the UP or anything like that, or way up high in the mitten. I'm pretty sure it's going to be in the southern part of the state.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, there are some. I mean, I think they killed the state record last year in the southern part of Michigan. It was a private land buck, but it was just on the cover of like one of the big whitetail magazines. They killed a giant down there. But I think, like I said, I think that's awesome that you guys are coming to Michigan and gonna have that camp and just show the camaraderie. I mean, I think aside from the fact that you guys are saddle hunters first and good people versus businessmen or whatever, I think we've gotten away a little bit from the deer camp aspect, and that's kind of what we try to do on this podcast, and our friends over at the Deer Hunter podcast kind of are the same way, is that it's more about sharing it with somebody. If you can't share it with anybody, it doesn't really matter. And so to come to Michigan for that deer camp experience, kind of like what you outlined, that is amazing. And I hope you guys kill, awesome representative bucks for the state of Michigan. And I'm really looking forward to following along with it. And where can people follow along with that if that's what's going to do? Who's going to be showcasing and where can they find that?
So we'll be putting out content on all of our social media channels. So Tethrd, you can pretty much follow Tethrd Nation anywhere. Tethrd Nation is Facebook, Tethrd Nation is Instagram, and Tethrd Nation is YouTube. We're bringing Jared with us. He's coming with us, and he's our media guru. He's the wizard behind the camera and the editing machine. He's the Tethrd media director. So he and I will kind of be tag teaming nightly content. So we're going to follow the same kind of storyline that the Public Land Challenge did last year, where they were feverishly collecting content and editing and getting it posted daily, if not every other day. So we're going to do the same thing. So the best place to follow along with the challenge is going to be the Hunting Public YouTube channel and Tethrd Nation YouTube channel. But there's going to be so much content coming out of this. We're talking about doing podcasts and all kind of stuff. So it's going to be a blast.
Oh, it sounds like it. And I really hope that Jared isn't the only East Coast guy that you're going to be bringing with you, because we drank 10,000 beers with Billy and Taylor. And I considered, and I actually talked to Walt, Walt over at Chasing Tails podcast. Tethrd is their title sponsor now, and I've been dealing with Walt. If you follow along with the podcast, Walt and I are what I'd consider friends, even though my wife's like, this guy wants to wear your skin. You don't even know who he is. He's a real person. Because that's how the podcasting world goes. But I even told Walt, I was like, I really wanted to get Taylor in on this call just to do the intro, like to talk to you guys and then be like, all right, I'm going to hit record, and then have Taylor do the intro just to mess with you guys. Yeah. So I hope you bring one of those two out this way.
They're invited. Obviously, they're invited. They're part of the crew. We love Taylor and Billy. Those guys are, great dudes and super fun to be around. So they're absolutely invited. I don't know if they can make it work around their schedules, but yep, definitely invited.
Yeah, and you're right. You got to bring your professional drinking shoes to drink with those guys, because they know what they're doing.
Yeah, they've been down that road a time or two. It's kind of like killing deer for them. It's just one after another.
Yeah.
So, but guys, I really appreciate you taking the time, and I feel really bad. It's taken this long to kind of get together and come together on this. But like I said, this wasn't your typical saddle hunting podcast where this is a tether and this is a platform and this is what you need. I wanted to hear from you guys and kind of what the problems were and your experiences and, kind of everything about the company, because I really do appreciate the organic nature and the genuineness that comes from it. And it sucks, in some degree that, you don't hit your, somebody wants to order it on a Friday and they got to hunt on Sunday and they don't get their stuff because Amazon's created that. So, that part of it sucks, but you guys, your hearts are in the right place and you're doing it for all the right reasons. And that's kind of what I wanted to showcase on this podcast. So I really appreciate you guys taking the time. It's been a long day, long weekend, long, everything for you guys. So I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us tonight.
Well, I'm super glad we finally made it work out. Like you said, we've been trying to have this podcast forever. And then we even got to hang out with you guys quite a bit up at ATA, which hopefully you guys are going again this year. And if you are, we'll link up again. It's going to be closer to you this year because it's in Indianapolis, right? You guys, hopefully you're planning on going. And if you do, make sure you link up with us so we can hang out and have some more beer with Taylor and Billy.
Yeah, we're doing everything that we can. We're going to get in on those Tethrd tickets, right? We'll just send you guys a check.
You got it.
Well, thanks a lot. Like I said, you guys, I really appreciate it. And, Tethrd Nation YouTube, Tethrd on Instagram, and, everything else you guys have going on. I don't know how much. Jared, are you still producing content now that you're on the payroll, or is everything going to be Tethrd?
All at once, so it's something I got to figure out still. But, yeah, there's going to be a ton of stuff coming out this fall for Tethrd, so it's going to be exciting stuff. So,
and where can people follow along with you?
Yeah, so I'm flinging arrows on YouTube and also Hunt Appalachia. So Hunt Appalachia is me and my good buddy Grant, and we take a more lighthearted approach to things. We don't take ourselves very seriously, but we knock down some deer and put out some pretty decent videos, I think. So, yeah, that's kind of the three things I got going on right now.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you guys so much, and we do truly appreciate it, and we look forward to following along and seeing you again down in Indianapolis.
Absolutely. Can't wait.
Man. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Romantic, isn't it? Shut up and sit down.